Welcome. My name is Erica Wall, and I am the director of the Berkshire Cultural Resource Center here at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. And this is our introductory segment of Theater Thursday, which we're really excited to be launching today. And I'm really pleased to have with me Associate Professor Jeremy Winchester of the Theater Department here at MCLA'a. And welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. I think this is kind of a brainchild that we had. I guess we had started to talk about this, I guess, sometime last year. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited that it's actually coming to fruition and that we're able to do this virtually. And so we'll be doing this every first Thursday of the month. And since we just launched a new school year, it seems appropriate that this would be not just the introduction to this segment, but to this season's theater. But let's start out first. Since you and I are going to be hosting this each month, I think it would be great. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this was to highlight the theater department and what you do and to share with folks what's going on, but more importantly, to bring some transparency to theater and help us to understand and educate ourselves and to better appreciate theater. So let's start out with, how long have you been at MCLA'a?
I am starting my 5th year here. This is the beginning of my 5th year.
Okay,
so
great.
It's been, it feels like about 3 months and also much longer than 4 and change years.
Right, I understand. I feel you on that. So tell us a little bit about your career in theater and how you landed here and where you were before you came to MCLA'a.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So my career has been pretty, I've moved around a lot by design. I have chosen a path of sort of, I guess, continuing exploration. I guess I would say I was something of a generalist early on. My earliest work was as an actor and a technician and a stage manager, doing a little bit, and as a designer, doing a little bit of a number of things. And that was after college, and decided eventually that I wanted to pursue advanced education, and had gotten most interested in lighting design. And so I went to graduate school for that, and I really dedicated myself to lighting design exclusively for about a decade. Mm-hmm. And that took me through to my first tenure track teaching position at another institution a number of years ago, where I was teaching lighting design pretty happily, but I got a surprise opportunity to take a job as an artistic director at a theater company that served young people and their families. This was the first full-time theater job I had had right out of college, and had stayed in touch with the leadership of that institution over the years. And when the artistic director decided to retire, I was in a position of being able to come back to that place, Flint Youth Theater it was called, and take over. And when I did that, it really introduced me to my love of things outside of lighting design. I had started working in a lot of areas and had left them behind. In coming back to run a theater company full time, it really required me to get reacquainted with some of those things in order to do my job well. And in that first year back, I did a little bit of acting, a little bit of stage management, and I started directing, and really found that I loved it. And since that time, I certainly have continued to design, and it's still the thing that I do more than any other single area. But I really have found a great love for being involved in as many parts of theater as I can, and eventually came to feel that I wanted to take that sort of generalist approach, holistic approach, back into academia. And this position came open 4 and change years ago, and it seemed perfect to teach this this approach to diving down deeply in multiple areas at a liberal arts college. That's absolutely what a liberal arts college is about. To do so at a reasonably small place with a high commitment to equity, to access. My career has always been about a dedication to those things. So coming to MCLA'a was an opportunity for me to connect a lot of threads from a variety of times and places in my career, and offer that experience and that perspective to the students here at MCLA'a.
That's great. I wonder, so tell us about, well, I guess first and foremost, tell us about the department and maybe what the focus is and what we want our students to leave with once they have gone through the program.
Sure. Well, I should begin by saying that the department, the theater program is one of several programs within the Department of Fine and Performing Arts. And our colleagues in Fine and Performing Arts are in visual art, arts management, and in music. The theater program itself, the faculty members consist of myself, Laura Standley, who has an MFA in acting, and Michaela Petrovich, who has an MFA in costume design. And the three of us work together to teach, I think, a pretty complete and robust program in terms of the content that we cover, from performance of all types to all of the major design areas, construction, criticism, and we do that in a way that is fairly fluid. You know, I will direct on the season. Of course, Laura directs on the season. Michaela and I share production management responsibilities. You know, what roles any one of us take on a show-by-show way is quite fluid. And part of what I think that offers to the students is an opportunity for them to see how their careers can be fluid if they want them to be fluid. So many theater programs will peg students when they walk in the door based on the student's interest and aptitude, and really keep them in that lane. That certainly works for some students. Some students are ready right out of high school to say, I'm going to be an actor, and that's exactly and only what I'm going to be, and commit to that and run with it. But there are lots and lots of other students whose interests are broader than that, or who have yet to decide where exactly they want to land. And MCLA'a is a great place for students like that to be able to learn. You know, we used to say a little bit about a lot of things, but I actually think they learned a lot about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. The mechanism that we do all that through is really twofold. First, of course, the students are teaching classes in performance, in design, in construction. They also then get to put all of that work, all of that theory that they've picked up in the classroom, to practice in our production season. We produce 4 shows a year, that's 2 per semester, and we run each semester like a theater company. At the beginning of the semester, students will audition and interview, mm-hmm. and through auditioning, of course, they're placed in the cast in one of the 2 shows. Through the interview process, they are invited to be company members in one of the production areas. So students will serve as stage management, as box office personnel, as set construction, costume construction, all of the many other things beyond acting that mm-hmm. go into the show, that create the platform upon which the audience gets the opportunity to engage with the actors. All of that is done by the students. Laura and Michaela and I, of course, have leadership positions, but we are 3 people of usually 50 or more students, right, who are doing a variety of things on the show. And because we do 2 shows per semester, 4 per year, by the time the students leave MCLA, they really have had a robust 4 years worth of experience of what it is like to work for a theater company and what it is to do a variety of different jobs for a theater company. And so they walk into the next phase of their life with a really complex and multi-layered set of experiences and resume to begin to move forward professionally, or go on to graduate school, or whatever it is they're going to do next.
So tell us, before you share with us what the upcoming season is going to bring, what's something we think we know about theater, but we don't?
I think the relationship between what acting is and the rest of the work that goes into it is not really fully known, widely appreciated. I would be the first person to tell you that what the actors do are the most important part of theater. Without actors, we have no theater. Absolutely, you can do theater without a lighting designer, but you can't do it without actors. It's just not theater anymore if they're not there. But on any given show, you know, I mentioned that 50 some odd people that are usually working on our shows, and on any one show at MCLA in any one semester, there are in the neighborhood of 50 people working on it. Of those 50 people, between 6 and 12 are in the cast. All of the others are working on the show in a variety of other ways: construction, management, front of house. The sheer volume of work that's happening, you know, we say behind the scenes, that implies backstage work, but let me just say behind the scenes, and I mean that in a variety of ways, is just at a scale that I think is not typically fully appreciated.
So tell us, that brings us to this season. What does this season have in store for us?
So we will often think about a loose theme or general guiding principle in selecting the season, and we have done so this year. The season title is Crossing the Divide, and the idea is to, in a challenging and divided time, present projects to explore how we stay connected, how we can focus on what matters, and how we can emerge stronger than ever. Of course, when I say that we're disconnected and how we can emerge, you know, I'm referring to a number of things that are going on in our society right now. Theater is always a mirror for society. What theater artists choose to do with that mirror varies widely. But we take very seriously our role to provide not just the students in the theater program, but the students on the campus as a whole, as well as the Northern Berkshire community beyond the campus, to participate as audience members in our theater season in ways that allow them an opportunity to reflect on current events of the day. Certainly right now, we are in the midst of still very much grappling with COVID-19, still very much dealing with mass national protests surrounding Black Lives Matter, still very much dealing with a national election that touches on both of those things and many more things. And we view theater, we view our job through those lenses. And so our season will focus on those issues, sometimes quite directly, as with the first show of the year, and sometimes a little more indirectly with something like, say, Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream at the end of the year. But each of them was carefully chosen to provide the opportunity for the students and the audience alike, opportunities to reflect on this very difficult time and commune through it. Right, we're physically separated right now most of the time. I went to Mass MoCA earlier today. I had a little break, and it's the first time I went in. I used to go 2-3 times a week, and it's the first time I've been since, I think, February. And I saw 3 people I knew, and it was so wonderful to even, with masks on. It was just wonderful to connect to other people. And while I'm glad I had that opportunity, I don't expect to get to have it regularly anytime soon. Mm-hmm. And theater, we think, I feel strongly, can be an opportunity for us to stay connected as we make our way through this difficult time, so that when we come to the other side of it, whenever that is, we will have had the opportunity to commune through the shared act of theater going, and for the students in the theater program, the shared act of theater making. We don't really have water cooler shows anymore, and we're also not gathered around the water cooler anymore. But theater, I think, can be a way, the live performing arts can be a way to share with your friends, your family, your community, experiences that are in direct reflection to what's going on in our lives. And whether we talk about the shows that we saw or just experience them together and know that our loved ones experienced it too, that we think those things matter.
Right. So tell us about what the first offering will be.
Sure. The first play of the year is called The Race. Mm-hmm. We'll be presenting the first 2 shows of the year digitally on Zoom. The second 2, the 2 in the spring, we don't know yet. We're waiting to make those decisions. So for this first show, as well as for the second, audiences will have the opportunity to share the show with a much more geographically dispersed audience than we've ever been able to do before. And that is, I think, artistically compelling, particularly on the first show, because of the nature of the play. It is expressly about the national presidential election. It was written originally in 2008 by a theater company by the name of Sojourn Theater, led by their artistic director, Michael Rode. And they devised this play when they were in residence at Georgetown University, 12 years ago now, I guess. And the play is meant to be an interactive exploration about what we look for in a leader during a national election, to be the leader of our nation. And when they started on that exploration together, they, of course, it took a year and a half to develop that play, which premiered just before the national election. At the time that they started, they certainly did not know Barack Obama was going to be elected. And when, of course, he was, that was such a watershed moment in our country. The play took on a kind of deeper resonance than they had appreciated when they went into it. They found, I think, the need to do the show again 4 years later, and then it happened again 4 years after that. And with this year's election, that theater company, those artists, really wanted to open it up to a much broader community of theater makers. And so MCLA'a is one of 12 or 13 different organizations across the country that are producing this play right now. Those other organizations include professional theaters like Intiman in Seattle and Matrix in Detroit, as well as theater programs at Cornell University, at Virginia Tech, at Columbia College in Chicago. So we're in a really, I think, compelling group of organizations that are exploring the question of what do we look for in a national leader during the time of an election in what again promises to be an incredibly impactful election. We have been working together as a collective of national theater artists since early December. We originally started to meet in order to figure out how do we present this play digitally, because we all knew we would be presenting a play digitally. And then after the events in Minneapolis earlier in the summer, we then began to discuss how can the play partner with the great and urgent national need to continue anti-racist work in the arts. And so the dialogue that we have been engaged in with our fellow theater artists across the country on the topic of this play have been focused on that very question since I guess I would say mid-summer. To that end, I decided quite early on that I was the wrong person to direct this show, or at least to do so by myself. And I reached out to a longtime collaborator of mine, a fellow theater artist, Alex Lee Reed, who's based in Seattle, and invited him to co-direct the show with me, which I would not have been able to do if we weren't doing the show digitally. And so he and I have been working with the students since about the second or third week of September in figuring out how this play, this interactive play, can explore in a meaningful and impactful manner Black Lives Matter specifically as a part of this question that we're asking about leadership.
Mm-hmm. So when you say it's digital or digitally going to be displayed or shared, how will that work? Will the students actually, will it be filmed and then it's shared digitally, or how is that working? Just logistically, I'm curious.
For this first show, the idea is to do it like a Zoom call, very much like we're doing right now. Okay. The students will all be in their dorm rooms or wherever, and we'll all call into Zoom. There are a variety of additional technologies that will allow us to modify the nature of the Zoom call and do some interesting design changes to the platform. Mm-hmm. And then we're feeding all of that into YouTube, and it will live stream to a YouTube channel. So the audience that comes to the show, they'll all get sent a YouTube link, and they will to a YouTube channel, and they'll go there on the performance day and time. But they will very much watch the show live, and the show is dependent on audience interaction. The show asks questions of the audience and needs answers from the audience in order to keep the show moving forward. So we'll be using the live chat feature on YouTube. I guess not the chat feature, the commentary feature. Sure. And we'll invite audience members to respond to specific questions at different times in the show. And then that will keep the show moving forward.
Has it been challenging to try to use this digital virtual kind of platform and translate that into what you're doing? And how are the students responding to that? How is that working?
Certainly it's been challenging. I think that the nature of theater is that, and I'm sure that this is true of any art form, musicians would tell you the same thing, painters would tell you the same thing. We're forever encountering challenges and figuring out how to turn them into features, right? Mm-hmm. How to turn an obstacle into an opportunity. So this feels familiar in that regard, but the scale of the obstacle turned opportunity is bigger than usual. So we're thinking very much about what is the nature of this box that we're in? What is theatrical about it? How can we partner with it to create dynamic and physically robust theater? I would say certainly as a theater program here at MCLAA, we're very much interested in physical theater storytelling, and so we're exploring how to carry that into this tiny little frame. You know, I think the students are doing great. I think the actors in the process have really taken the challenge that all of this represents like complete professionals. I couldn't be prouder of how thoroughly they've embraced this challenge, and how enthusiastic they have been about creating something meaningful from the challenge itself, not just working around the challenge and how can we get around to the challenge, but they've really embraced the idea of taking the challenge and baking that into the cake. And I couldn't be happier about how successfly that's gone.
That's great. So within the time period that you have to do this, does it work the same way? Will you need the same amount of time? Are you trying to do more and less time to be ready for when it will actually be staged?
We're taking about the same amount of time, give or take, but we've chopped up that time a little bit differently. We did a 2-week rehearsal and exploration process right out of the gate, and then we took 2 weeks off for Alex and I to think about what we learned in that 2-week exploration phase and make decisions about how we're changing the nature of the script. Because this is a national collective and we're working with the playwright, he has encouraged all of us to change the script however we need to make it work for our particular set of circumstances. So we explored that for 2 weeks, and then we took 2 weeks. We're coming to the end of that 2-week period of script refinement and design refinement. And we will pick up again next week, and we'll rehearse 4 straight weeks until we open. So in the end, I'll say we spent about the same amount of time as is typical on this show, but we've used that time in a substantially different way.
Right. So tell us, I know that there's definitely a purpose behind how it will, or when it will actually open. And so it opens, and then the election actually will happen, and then we will see it again after that. How does that work with this show?
Because of the audience interactive, well, I should say it's not just about audience interaction in this play. Part of the nature of this play involves the actors posing questions of one another, of invited guests, and of the audience watching the show. So the play will change night to night, regardless of when we do it, because the actors use new questions each night. Nobody knows what question they're going to be asked. So when an actor is asking another actor a question about the nature of leadership, about Black Lives Matter, about life in quarantine, about whatever it is, the actor who's being asked the question does not know what they're about to be asked. So their response is live. What you'll be seeing is an actor responding to a question from one of their fellows that they don't know is coming. And we'll have invited guests who will call into the Zoom from all over the country, and they'll get asked questions that they don't know is coming. And of course, the audience doesn't either. So that mechanism allows us this opportunity to do the show both before and after the election. The play has a framework in that um, the elements of the show happen in the same order each night. There are certainly scripted portions and music portions and video portions, uh, but the questions that are being asked and how they're being answered change every time. And
Wow.
it is that changing every time that allows us to do it before the show and after the show. And that'll of course be two radically different halves, before
So
and
does
after.
that mean that actors have some lines that they memorize and some of it is improvised?
Yes, yes, exactly. What they'll have to know cold and well is the sequence of events, um, so that they have the bandwidth really to be able to answer those questions in a thoughtful and responsive way, while not having also to think about, okay, what happens next in the play, right? So I think that it is a substantial intellectual effort on their part to make the show happen.
So when the actors are asked different questions each time, do they know what possibly they'll be asked, or is it just kind of, it's like there are 5 possible questions I might be asked this night?
The Sojourn Theater, when they did this with the students at Georgetown in 2008, generated a list of 1,000 questions that the actors are choosing from each night to ask of their fellows. I don't know that we'll quite get to that number. We're writing our questions just like they did the first time, but we also have access to the list of questions that they used 4 years ago, and it's,
Okay.
I don't know, 1,200, 1,500 questions. I mean, they're all loosely on this topic, right?
Right.
The questions of the moment, but it could be anything, really, literally.
Yeah. That's really amazing. I think that's going to be really, really engaging. I think everybody's going to have to be alert. So, how does it work to attend? Is it the same as getting a ticket and then for each night, or how will that work digitally if people want to get?
We are putting that mechanism into place right now, and we've recently made the decision actually to do it via SurveyMonkey. We will,
Okay.
rather than posting a link to a ticket site, we will post a link to a survey, and people who want to come to the show will be able to self-select in that survey which night they want to come, how many tickets they need, by answering the series of questions, and once they've done so, they'll be sent a link for the live performance. And I should say that though we're doing it on YouTube, we're not recording it. We don't plan to record it. Each night is a live show. You have to be there at 8 to participate the show, and once it's done, it's done.
Yeah, I think that sounds amazing. So, and how long will that run?
It runs for 2 weekends, the weekend prior to and after the election. So that's the last the last weekend in October and the first one in November.
Great. And so what will follow the race for this offering in the semester?
The second show of the semester is also something quite new for us. We're doing a staged reading festival. I've only been here 4 years, but as far as I know, we've not done anything like this before. Mm-hmm. And the shows, we'll do 6 total shows over 3 nights. So each performance will have 2 staged readings, each one of which will be directed by a student. So our students will have the opportunity to be directed by their fellows. Of course, the faculty and I will be working with them to make it all work. But they are getting the opportunity to direct the shows, to choose the plays themselves. The titles will be chosen by the students, and all of the aspects of the shows will be directly driven by the decisions that the students are making. We really wanted to give the students, because of the challenges of this year, we really wanted to give them an experience that would empower them in a time that can feel so very powerless, right? So many decisions are being made for us by um, by administrators, by governors, by the president in this really difficult time. And even when the decisions are good decisions and being made by others for good reasons, it is nevertheless a uniquely powerless feeling time right now, I think, particularly for the students, to be back here on campus and navigating these waters. And so we felt that giving them this opportunity to really create this festival from scratch, where they make all of the decisions, would be a deeply empowering and therefore powerful experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
In the spring, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And then there will be 2 shows in the spring, and they will run together at the end of the semester. We call that in rep or in repertory. So that will open with Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, and then towards the middle of April 9th, I think, off the top of my head, and that will perform that weekend. And then the next weekend we open the second show, which will be a devised play. And then they will run together for the next 2 weekends, each for a total of 6 performances over 3 weekends total.
And so with going back to the student, the plays that'll be read, is the preparation for that, is it, what am I trying to say? Are the students preparing to create something for this? Like at this point in their careers within the department, are they prepared to do this? Or do you feel like some students are just ready to kind of jump into doing something like this?
I think so, and the students who are furthest along in their journey are the ones that have been expressed interest in directing and have been invited to direct. They are the ones that we feel that, with our input, are in a good position to be able to helm these 6 ships. The faculty and I aren't completely hands off in the process. We're there to guide them and help them, chart their way through the decision-making process, point out really bumpy waters ahead when we see them, and partner with them in figuring out how they will navigate those bumpy waters. Mm-hmm. Certainly some of the students, the students who are earlier along in their journey, their work will be a little more like what they usually do, not yet leadership positions. So it's certainly our goal and our expectation that students will be able to move their education forward in this experience wherever they are in their process as they walk into it.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a great season. In the midst of all that's going on, I think the students will definitely benefit as they would if we weren't in a pandemic. I'm really excited because we're going to take these semesters and really be able to look at each offering and kind of think about what that means, how it's been received, and really deconstruct it. So I really appreciate you, explaining and giving us the overview. And I think, it's going to be exceptionally exciting in November, because we're going to talk again in that first Thursday after the election, and the show has opened, and then it will have its second weekend after our talk. So I think that'll be really interesting. And as we move along, we'll talk about the students' work, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and then the other performance that you'll be doing. As we kind of go through this year and prepare for all of this, I wonder if you ever get the question, or what is it about theater? Like, is it I don't know, coming up in like even high school, like, oh, that's the theater group, like that's the there it is. And I kind of felt like, oh, what is it really about? What's the draw? And for those of us that have that, like, I'll use my husband as an example, like, to get him to go, I mean, he will go with me to a theater if I ask him to go, and most times it's okay, but I think we really often need to deconstruct why we're going, what makes it so, versus going to a film, or never get him to see like a musical on film. Like, that is definitely, so, you know what I mean? Like, tell me what is it that we're missing? Because I don't know if I'm off base, but I think people have a certain kind of perception of theater, like, oh, I'm not really a theater person. What does that mean? What should we know?
Well, thank you for asking that. I do think there is a sense that it is elitist, and certainly sometimes it can be. I think lots of people, even if they wouldn't put it that way, certainly do feel like it's not for them. There was a time before TV, before film, where there weren't those perceptions. I think that in the last 75 years, as theater has had to make way for the new, at the time, ways that people were engaging in narrative storytelling, there has been lots of attempts to figure out what is our place in that larger landscape. I think some of those attempts have been successful, and some of those attempts have pushed people away. I would say to people who find themselves thinking that we know, and we are working on that, and we spend a lot of time thinking about the community that we're a part of. Just using MCLA'a Theater as an example, I mean, of course, the campus community, North Adams and Williamstown and the Northern Berkshires and Massachusetts generally, we spend a great deal of time thinking about committing to this place so that we may be part of this place, so that we may understand what it is to be part of this place, so that we may program our season and offer to our neighbors and our friends and our loved ones things that we think they will find valuable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is by coming to the shows and engaging with us artists about the work that they're seeing, that our friends and our loved ones and our neighbors can help us to better understand where we're getting it right and where we are not. And so anybody that is interested in theater that is for them, that they would find engaging, that they would want to come and participate in, I would invite them to come and begin that process with us so that we can get there together.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is something that we definitely face in the visual arts world, with that same idea that it's somewhat elitist or exclusive. But the interesting thing to me is you had mentioned that before there was an art world and all these things, we appreciated the visuals of, drawings on cave walls and all that went into a white cube. But I think also what I hope that we can talk about and illuminate in the same way that we do with the visual arts is that it is accessible, it is out there, and it is contemporary, it is relevant, and it is a mirror. Sometimes the perception that we have in the art world that everything revolves around Picasso, and that's not true. There is a very broader representation of what is visual arts, and there are those that came before, and there are very different interpretations of even what we understand to be the canon. And Shakespeare is a perfect example of
Right.
in which it's been interpreted, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more with Midsummer Night's Dream. But I think that that's really what we're talking about, the relevance, that it is a contemporary art, and that it can be experienced in very many different ways from what we perceive it to be or what we even see it to be. You know, I guess there are only so many times in each history of different arts where a Hamilton comes along or something.
Right.
Right.
That's a once in every few decades experience. You know, one of the things that I think theater can do that film and TV can't is we can be much more responsive. The time that it takes to, from conception to opening night, create something from scratch can be so much shorter in theater than it can be in television and film. Certainly sometimes some plays take a long time to develop, but we have the opportunity to be nimble in a way that things that are recorded with a camera aren't. And so we can be responsive to a changing society, things that are happening so as the Black Lives Matter movement was taking off again this summer, there was a raft of responses, theatrical responses to that, because theater was well positioned to act now, to get it out there now. And if as an audience member you're interested in engaging with an art form that can really speak in a moment-to-moment way about what's happening, theater's the way.
I think that that's a very, very good point. And as you're describing that, I was also thinking about when we aren't in the midst of a pandemic, that I think it is for some what draws is that actual experience with the actors. There's no screen dividing us. There's no, you know, and it makes it much more intimate, which makes it much more impactful sometimes, even more, it can be overwhelming, I think, which is what brings people back, which is a little bit different than being wowed by the effects of a film or the very orchestrated work of television. So I think that that's a really good point. And, you know, again, I'm really excited to launch this segment with you and get into more of that for folks, because I think that we are definitely trying to illuminate what we don't see. We see what we see, but it's really more about what we don't see. And I think that this is our opportunity to look at that. So I think this brings us, it always goes much quicker than I think, to the end of our session, but we will come back together on Thursday, November 5th, at which time we'll talk about The Race with your co-director, and we'll talk about how the opening of it was, how it's been, and then talk about the show itself, and then I guess we'll probably talk about the election.
I would think so. It's going to be hard to avoid it.
Yeah, so I think that I'm looking forward to that. But more importantly, I really appreciate you spending the time with us and doing this program with us. I think it's going to be great.
It's my great pleasure and honor. Thank you for making the opportunity.
Oh, it's a pleasure for us too. So we will see you in November. Be well, be safe, and we will talk to you soon.
Great.
Take care.
Erica.